This week on New to You, A Sure Thing, Part 2, David Simon's The Deuce. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the New to You Show. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt, with me.
One of your other hosts, Keith Vincent.
And your other host, Julian Cage.
All right, so we are approaching the second part, the second third, 66% of this topic, A Sure Thing. So before we get into my pick, a little bit about the show. We are a recommendation and review podcast where we put out stuff that some of us like for you and tell you go check it out.
And based on a theme. We
Based
kind
on
of
a theme.
rotate through themes.
Because otherwise it would just be a scramble of
be a
things we like.
free-for-all.
Yeah. We'd just be recommending too much stuff.
Too much good
We
stuff.
have to set up little handicaps for ourselves to rein in all of our recommendations. Otherwise, you'd get an overload of amazing media.
Exactly.
Yes.
Why don't we get into my pick? You ready?
Yes.
Let's get
All right.
right in.
Hey, baby brother. You still betting? Winning. See how long that lasts. You could do what they do.
I know I could, but would I?
I wouldn't want to make you feel like thing.
You're smarter than you let on.
Who's your man? No man.
So my sure thing. So the interpretation I took, and this is kind of based on your kind of lead on it, Keith, was that this is something that you will go to this content and by this creator or of a certain type or whatever, and it has ceased to, or it has never ceased to like fill your need.
Yeah.
Like it always has maintained like a level of charm or quality, or like it's delivered.
No duds.
It's delivered
No
consistently.
duds. Yeah.
And, you know, your expectations of it, it meets the expectations that you have every time you go into it,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And sometimes it's surprising.
Sometimes
those
it
are your
exceeds them.
Right.
Mhm.
So my pick is David Simon as writ large, you know, the guy who created like Homicide: Life on the Streets. What else did he make? He did
Wire.
The Wire was a big one. Treme, The Corner. He's had a couple like little short things like Generation Kill and Show Me a Hero.
All his articles as a reporter for the Sun-Times.
Yeah, you know, but he was a beat journalist. He did like crime reporting and then started writing. You know, he did Homicide: A Year Killing on the Streets first. I think it was a short series, and then made Homicide: Life on the Street, which was a really like good crime procedural that kind of broke away from the Law and Order mold and had a little more like
Grit.
but like grit.
Super
that being,
groundbreaking show.
Yeah,
when
it
came
felt
out.
real. And
Yeah.
in I don't know, you could watch like Law and Order SVU and they're like living in a gorgeous like veneered wood like office loft, and the jail is sort of like bespoke like hand wrought iron.
Right.
You know, like everything is gorgeous in SVU,
And it's very, also very formulaic. Which
and gorgeous. All the like everyone, victims, attackers, everyone's gorgeous in SVU. Beautiful people.
Ice-T, gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous. But anyway,
Cracks me
but
up
you
on
know,
that
like
show.
you go to Homicide and it's like
Well,
Baltimore,
speaking of which,
gray,
though,
dingy, like just.
The guy from SVU is a direct link. Munch
Mm-hmm.
is a
He's
is
one of those
Munch.
characters, yeah.
And there's a something that links Munch to all these different cop show universes.
Yeah,
on,
he's
on
like-
he skips over networks. He's all over the place, which is I think
Yeah.
is really neat.
So you know, it's definitely like things white people love, The Wire kind of thing. You know, like, but The Wire was amazing. Like it was really season for season, a new cast of characters for the most part, like, or a new sort of paradigm for a set of characters, and development of all these story arcs and themes per season that would evolve and develop. And it's stuff that like, you know, like I'm watching The Americans right now, season 4, and there's a big like food theme.
Mm.
And or maybe it's season 4 or 5, but it's like hit you over the head with the food theme. Like every scene they are trying to fit food in there, kind of thing. Whereas like this, they like weaving in a season about journalism and public perception and what is truth and like what is rumor and those sort of things, all and like facts versus like fabrication. All that stuff plays into one theme heavily in the season and still works with the characters' arcs and is just smart. And again, just feels real. The characters read, everything's real. And then you get to Treme, and I know like just basically you're getting a slice of a place that has like a level of depression, high level of crime, and but like a culture that's unique. And you get a taste and a flavor, and most importantly, Treme leans on the music. The music is sort of the hub that everything circles around, and all these lives circle around, and it's people trying to pick themselves up post Katrina and
rebuild that community around the music,
and keep that community alive in the face of potential gentrification or the wrong people building up around them,
rebuilding,
and then the people who are there dealing with the fact that there's still heavy amounts of depression and a lot of crime, and that it's not an easy place to live. And so then you get to the Deuce, which is more, I mean, I guess it's another, like, he definitely explores the turning points and aspects of Baltimore homicide, drug war, like the war against crack on the streets is a big one. Treme, like this community putting itself together post Katrina. The Deuce is
it's like situations on the brink.
Right. Yeah. So this is like the base premise is that you have this sort of like convergence of like gritty New York,
but stricter laws on certain. They're going to try to clean things up.
Right.
Prostitution laws are like
like prostitution laws, especially like, and this is New York, like the gritty old version, the pre-Disney version of Times Square.
New York's New York.
Yeah.
All crime.
and so the convergence of this sort of like tipping point is the sort of legalization and mainstreaming of pornography. So like the beginning of like in the early 70s where
I wouldn't say mainstreaming, but kind of like the precipice of.
Well, like with legalization, it becoming like, you get your Behind the Green Doors and Deep Throats that are art house films. And so people still like, you just get these two worlds, this one like heavily.
Where it turns to exploitation.
Well, it's already like the exploitation part is there. There's already a heavy underground of masseuses and mobsters and prostitution and stag film creation and all this stuff. And now you have this legitimate world developing. And the characters in this, like James Franco plays a set of twin brothers who basically open and run a mob front. And they're sort of getting into this new world. Like Maggie Gyllenhaal plays a character who's a prostitute who's becoming entrepreneurial and trying to like get into pornography / like legit pornography.
She's trying to keep her girls safe.
Right. Like she's taking it's a similar theme sort of in The Wire, like taking illegitimate businesses, like illegal, explicit, or what is it? Yeah, like illicit businesses, and turning them into legitimate businesses, especially in a time when like a law flips it and like makes it so. Now, how do you make that shift and transition? And so, like, I don't know, it's compared to like, say, a Boogie Nights, which is like a different take on, I mean, it's LA, it's bright and shiny. It's sort of in the like, it's a different turning point. It's like the
home video.
It's like, the
theater
from
to
film that like, it's the end of this era to some degree.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whereas he's telling the story, the grittier sort of beginnings of legitimate like pornography industry versus a darker, seedier
legitimate pornography.
And I think one of the things that he does so well is take what I would say like systems, like systemic societal issues and problems, and manages to kind of show them through like really well written characters and scenes and dialogue. So they end up being I feel like they always are somewhat they feel somewhat educational to me in that like
exactly enlightening.
Right. I watch them for the characters and the stuff, but I feel like I learn from them. Like I feel like something that, I'd read about or that, I was aware of, some systemic problem, but it's like you really feel it in your gut, like how the system grinds people, it's like, and it's dealing with really complex issues, and he's able to show the nuance. Like it's not, he doesn't
It's
really
not
take
black and white,
sides. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just messy and
It's a
complicated.
world of gray.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason he's able to do that versus, I mean, a Boogie Nights isn't trying to do that, but
Right.
he also has the luxury of time because he's doing, these multi-hour, they're kind of like epic.
Multi-season,
Yeah.
yeah. It's because of that art form, and I feel like he's one of the, David Simon was the one who was on the forefront of this new wave of great
Television,
series
yeah.
TV, where he's just like, I'm going to use this time not to spin wheels in repetitive storylines, but to just say this show is the characters.
Right.
So I'm going to take the time to just live in the characters.
Yeah.
And not be afraid of a huge cast, but also respect every character and love them, really.
Yeah. And he also balances like, there is this kind of like gritty realism, but at the same time, like, especially The Wire is also like using very classical tragedy, like Greek tragedy kind of storytelling, and it does have this feeling of like, it doesn't feel like the storytelling isn't naturalistic. It doesn't feel like documentary style, But I think it's more powerful for that reason. Because, obviously I'm watching a lot of documentaries and thinking
You
about
are.
documentaries a lot recently. And, like, you kind of see where those can succeed and where they fail. And I think, like, The Wire just accomplished something that you never could for a documentary.
Right.
In large part because you could never have that
expose
access.
the same types of things that a good documentary would.
Right.
They just use different tools.
Yeah.
And I think it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
It's been attempted so many times and so many people have gotten it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he manages to make characters that are both an archetype, but also a very real person that you just really care about. And, the two things like live at the same time.
And exists. Like
Yeah.
this person is, these characters are as real, they feel as real as they are because you just know that he's written it in a way where that person probably lived, like he just knows somebody like that.
I also love that the tone, like it's through empathy that you that you take sides or that you decide this doesn't work. It's not through like the way he doesn't make anybody a villain, they just are they're just one component in this system, and you kind of understand them, and so it's not judgmental, but it still gets the job done, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, not totally. I mean, there are like he does build in some like straight villains.
Yeah.
But he usually they are couched in, and when they appear, they are part of, or they are eventually coded into the system that made them.
Yeah, they're enabled by it.
So when you get to the nail gun like mob cleaners for the drug cartel, like you kind of get who they are and that they are a force unto themselves, and it's sort of like they are a symptom of what this world is that exists here with these people. Like they are serving a function like a bacteria or something. It's becomes a little nature documentary in that. It doesn't make it any less sad when they off a character you like, but you don't hold it against them.
It's the laws of nature.
You see the system at play a little more.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Like Treme has an instance where like one of the main, like not a main character, but one of the characters that's sort of like fun and beloved just gets like shot in the street, basically for no little to no money kind of thing. Like he's being robbed at gunpoint and gets killed, and it's sad, but you kind of get like there's this confusion between the shooter and him, and that like again it's a societal issue that created this versus like this is a bad black guy, or this is, it's not a. He definitely is. He paints everyone with with shades of gray, and like you're saying, you understand their idealism or how beaten down they are, or how few options they believe they have, or how idealistic they are about their options based on how they're portrayed. And the Deuce is again like you get to see people who are in a pretty like dark and dire place, and this is like like it's sort of a redemption story for some of these characters. Like they already,
Which is funny because it's the first episode.
right.
It's the first episode and they're kind of being redeemed. Yeah.
Right. Like they are already at the like hardest point in their lives, you would hope. And so it's the story about like how do these people pull themselves out of this kind of thing.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm glad you guys talked about more of the larger context because I've only seen the pilot. So, and the pilot you don't know where it's going to go yet. I mean, like the Wire and a lot of the shows, it just kind of throws you into the situation, and it's really like setting up, establishing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, like how many characters it introduces, and you get a good sense of all of them. Like it's, yeah. Like, I'm trying to
Dude's good.
put a number on it, and I mean, some of it is that they managed to use a lot of shorthand, but yeah, it just establishes all the dynamics, all the characters right off the bat. It's setting the stage. And then I feel like maybe in the second episode you'll start to see where he's headed with it, because they don't introduce the whole pornography thing at all in the first episode.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like where everybody is and what the life
Right.
on the streets is like.
Like basically there are like a dozen main characters and then like recurring characters on top of that. So but like yeah, you get that dozen. And I mean one of the characters is two characters. Like it's the twins.
Right.
So
Yeah, and it's also
Baker's dozen.
And so is it based on real people? At least some of them. Like, are the twins based on real people?
I think they're all composites is where it kind of reads out. Like
But were they twins somewhere? Because that's such a specific thing.
some of it might be a play on like the Deuce, like there's two of them and they're twins and
Yeah, but I thought the Deuce was referring to 42nd Street.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
but it's also that there are these two characters and
But yeah, 'cause that's also like interesting, to get,
yeah,
how
I don't know.
to kind
I
of
mean,
have two characters that feel so much like the same character, but how different they are.
I have to look at that interview again that he did about the show.
I'm not a big fan of James Franco, so let me just put that right out there on the table. And the fact that he's twins in this bothers me because it's just like
yeah, you need
two
of them.
Yeah,
He needs to get paid twice.
and like okay, if you're a person who's making a film or a movie and you're like I need a character that's like James Franco, then by all means hire James Franco. He's really good at it.
Yeah.
But like if you're trying to get an actor to be anything that's not James Franco, hire anybody else besides him because he just doesn't even, it seems like he doesn't even try to be anybody else anymore.
I mean, he does. Like, I feel like one of the two brothers is James Franco, and the other brother is James Franco, like putting on an accent or something.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
he does distinguish them in some way, but I don't know how. It's not very subtle, let's
Yeah.
say. But I don't know. He's all right. He gets I think he's inoffensive to me.
He's all right. Yes.
Yeah, he doesn't knock it out of the park. He's all right, but I think he gets by on just charisma alone, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm not buying his charisma anymore. It's just like
But in light of the recent allegations against him, it is a lot harder to watch these sex scenes he's
I didn't
having
even think of that.
with all these actresses in this
Yeah.
thing. And I mean, it makes sense. Like, the sex is not gratuitous and often not sexy. It's just a little.
I feel like he was taking lessons from Boogie Nights in that way too, because the sex in Boogie Nights is just so like it's not at all arousing or erotic. It's just like business.
On top of that, Boogie Nights is comedic, and you kind of. I mean, I have to say, like, there is some humor in David Simon's work, but it's definitely not the most prevalent thing.
Yeah.
And certainly, I feel like Treme, although I enjoyed it, I felt was a little too. I feel like it was his most heavy-handed. Like, and it
Treme was.
Yeah, and it felt a little too like.
On the nosy, it was almost too soon.
No, definitely not too soon. But I mean, I totally think that, like wanting to celebrate that place and those people, and because I mean, we paid them New Orleans a great disservice, I think. But I don't know, it was too serious and self-important or something. It's like just lighten up a little bit, like have some humor, have some.
To be fair to Treme, I never gave it that much of a chance. I watched like 3 or 4 episodes. I never really stuck with it as much as which David Simon has earned that from me. I should just give it to him.
Yeah, I never finished it. I watched maybe half of it. I think it was just because even the
Half
Wire,
of the whole series or half of this
the whole
season?
series. I
Wow.
think.
Well done.
The Wire, like I felt like it had some humor. There were some
The
you know,
Wire, yeah.
yeah.
Well, see,
Saw a lot of
the
dark
Wire
humor.
is so
Yes.
tense. The Wire is so tense that like any little thing seems like humor. You know, it's
right.
like,
That's true. That's true.
and that's a thing that you see in live shows in theater. That's really good. Is just like, you almost are itching to break the tension with a laugh. So anything gets a laugh.
Yeah, and they did in The Wire. They did get to also like lean in on the police procedural, even though it's in some ways it was kind of playing with that.
Secondary,
It
yeah.
was, it still like helped kind of build tension and move things along. The kind of cat and mouse game that.
Well,
went
and
on.
then thankfully, when you go see Black Panther and you look at Michael B. Jordan and you think about
Mm-hmm.
poor Wallace,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's where The Wire will really hit you.
Dang,
Wallace.
dang. But Holt, have you seen many of the other episodes of The Deuce?
I've watched the first few, and I just did a quick look.
Well, there haven't been.
They
I mean,
are
they haven't
based on
wrapped up yet.
actual twins.
Oh wow.
So
So these are real characters that are.
well, there was some
historic.
guy I guess who worked on the set of Treme, like someone who was part of that cast or crew who owned a bar in New York around this time and like told them a bunch of stories. And it's weird. I guess one of the producers on this like is in jail right now for like trying to cover up like a drug overdose from a cocaine party.
On the show.
No, like
Oh.
somewhere on Long Island or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
What's the name? Do you know the name?
Mark Henry Johnson.
Okay.
But I don't know. Very weird, very dark, but yeah. Yeah, no, I've watched a few of the episodes. I mean, I really am enjoying the show. I think I don't
cast
know.
is solid.
Cast is like solid.
It's a cool time period to be making a show about.
The fashion, like, there's something about the fashion in that like period where it's like 60s into 70s too, like early 70s. You just didn't have. I don't know. Like again, it was like there was still like some level of natural, but like futuristic, like shiny, foily clothes and stuff that didn't seem as cheesy as like
80s,
early
futuristic.
80s or whatever, or like late 70s.
Yeah,
So many fewer shoulder pads.
Yeah,
but still, they're the color palette though of the '70s, the browns and oranges and
yeah.
Yellow,
yuck.
goldenrod.
That.
Yuck. I mean, at least like the '80s had more like some zany and was
Well-
colorful and neon.
I kind of feel well. I guess you still
Avocado
had this in the
green.
80s, but I kind of feel like it was like this thing where they're like, you know what, our cigarette smoke's just going to turn it yellow anyway.
Well, I will say, I mean, people do forget how much brown plastic. The 80s was so much about
Oh,
brown
yeah.
plastic.
That's true. Yeah.
Mr.
And
Coffee.
beige.
Yeah,
Atari.
yeah. Like refrigerators are just brown.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna have a refrigerator. What colors are brown?
Yeah, or
What color's
like
our stove? Brown.
ochre.
Yeah, now everything's like metal,
Stainless.
stainless
Yeah.
steel.
Have you noticed? This is a little tangential, but there's like a spout in comics, like they're getting like a lot of neons in play, like strong color palettes that are pretty vibrant. Like like in mind games, how you get those like bright, colorful characters and stuff. You get that kind of stuff, but I'm just seeing more and more. It's actually similar to like a Moebius, like heavy metal kind of color
Well, I'm
palette.
seeing this in the movies a lot too. All over the Thor Ragnarok movie, where they have this gradient that's almost like a rainbow gradient.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
But it happens in the effects like explosions and
Yeah.
things like this.
They
And
just get more
is
color.
that what you're talking about?
Sort
Something
of
like
it's,
that?
It's more like you see it. I may show you guys like some animation stuff after the show, but it's just something I've been seeing a lot. Like I'm seeing a lot of comic people using it, and like in Paper Girls, which is a pretty good one. I've been seeing it a lot, and like just in like a lot of illustration stuff, it seems to be like a new trend to go to these like almost neon colors and choices. Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. So yeah, we'll chat.
Jules
through
is showing us his iPhone X to rub it in.
his
us
Giorgio
faces.
Keith wallpaper.
No, they have very colorful,
It
like
opens. It opens.
multicolored.
I know it
things.
opens. I see that. It's an animated George O'Keeffe flower. Just like in the Deuce.
Just like in the Deuce.
Put your finger.
So, have you guys watched the Deuce?
Yeah, I
Um,
watched the pilot because you.
Nice.
said-
Do you think you would continue watching it?
I'm gonna give it a couple more try. I'm gonna give it a couple episodes.
You
but
watch it with Felix?
James Franco is
This is a tough one.
it's just hard for me to swallow.
Yeah.
I mean,
especially two of them.
yeah.
So,
Double Franco.
what about you, Jules? Did you?
I watched the first episode, and also some scenes were filmed in my neighborhood. I do think.
So some scenes from the first episode were filmed in your neighborhood, or some scenes of
no,
the series?
of
Okay.
the series, yeah. I just remember there were signs, and they said what it
Yeah.
was. We're like,
What's the Deuce? Because it must have been months before it came out.
yeah, it was, yeah. Yeah, we just knew it was a new HBO show from David Simon with James Franco.
And I don't want to get too deep into this. So would you, like with these problematic things, like the James Franco problematic stuff, and like we're a recommendation in place. If someone had never seen House of Cards, for instance, would you recommend them to watch House of Cards, the HD Netflix series?
I wouldn't because I've never seen it.
Um,
And I know that's a bad consumer of me, but I just have never seen it.
I mean, it's like kind of a fun show, but it's not like you can pass on it. You know what I mean? Like it's not, to me, it's not essential viewing.
What about The Usual Suspects?
I mean, I feel like that film has just been referenced so many times. It's one of those like cultural touch points as much because it was one of the first big like twist ending kind of movies, and also the director.
It was indie. It was like coming out of the indie world too. It was like a big, made a lot of noise.
Yeah,
Fincher, right?
And it's just been and it's just no. Is it Fincher?
No, because
the other guy.
that same year was it's Bryan Singer.
Yes,
it,
Bryan
yeah.
Singer. Yeah.
It was because Fincher was in Seven with David
Right.
Fincher that same year.
I don't know. I guess I just feel like it's significant in that way, but that
So-
much
And
of
honestly,
a classic.
I think we're all adults. I think you can separate the art from the artist. I'm not saying that dude should get a lot more work from now on, but I don't think that going back and watching Seven or any of those movies is gonna suddenly like. I don't think that you're suddenly gonna be like, oh, I'm a bad person for watching Kevin Spacey in
it's
the
also
weird
like
movie about cats.
These are like very collaborative projects.
Yeah.
And so to just say that one bad apple like spoils the whole batch. And the other thing too is like we don't know at what point in time these things
I
happen.
don't
So
think
it's
it
like
matters. I just think it's just like
Yeah.
I think to me it's like, okay, we found out this guy's
Creeper.
a jerk, a scumbag, so now he doesn't get hired anymore.
Yeah.
Does that mean that like, you can't watch some movie that he was in? I don't think so.
I think the harder like with actors, people who are again, like just a smaller piece of the puzzle. I think with somebody like Harvey Weinstein, who directly profited from all these films and who was orchestrating so many problematic things and and
abusing his power, yeah.
yeah, and abusing a lot of people involved in the production. Like that's harder. Like
Right.
but
It's
he was
harder
also
to-
responsible for so many
Yeah,
films.
it's harder
that
to
it's-
Yeah, but I'm
avoid the
not gonna
content.
not watch so many of the movies
Right.
that he. So I'm sorry, they're just too good. Like,
Well, but
it's complicated.
yeah, because the Kevin Smiths of the world, like
Yeah.
I now watch any minute now something bad's gonna come out about him. I hope not.
Oh, he just
I
had
mean,
a heart attack.
He's not. He's
Right.
really.
Yeah, he
I'm sorry
almost
to hear
died.
that. Those movies, Harvey Weinstein had a big part in making, and I don't know. I just think that like art made in spite of that should be a kind of a way to look at these things. You know
Right.
what I mean? And thinking of what a lot of these actresses had to go through to make this happen, you almost kind of like they deserve for you to watch the movies.
Yeah.
In a way. I mean, maybe this is just, hey, who needs another white dude to be talking about this stuff? But that's just the way I see it.
Yeah, I guess because I've been listening to a lot of You Must Remember This, which is that great
Mhm.
like movie history podcast, and she focuses a lot on the like early days, the turning point from sound or from silent into sound, and like the just all this, we've forgotten these stories because it's 60, 70 plus years ago, and or almost 90 years ago with some of these stories, and so she's setting us up with these sort of tales of very problematic things.
Yeah.
Like those are like the no one knew that how bad they were actually being kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
nobody was even hiding it because they didn't know they had to hide it.
No, they had staffs whose job
whose
was
job
just to hide
it.
these
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Like the worst of the symptoms. And so it was just like
That's a great podcast. Anyone out there
Yeah, that
who's
was-
interested in Hollywood, specifically, I think I might have even recommended this before, but
Mhm.
she did a whole season on the Charles Manson in Hollywood.
oh yeah, it was
And
Charles
it
Manson
was
Hollywood.
so good.
Yep.
Like just so good. So informative. Like stuff I
Mhm.
never even knew about it.
Yeah, I just finished her MGM series. Like it was all just like things connected to MGM. And so it's interesting to just there's scandal after scandal after scandal and terrible things these people are doing, like just serial abusers and people who like it's either stories of people who are abused by the system or people who abuse the system. And it was just sort of like this was the chrysalis or the crucible rather within which these art films were coming out, like, and basically everyone had an agenda, everyone's got politics, and so it's almost better to go watch these movies knowing like what like that Earl Flynn is doing Robin Hood with like a broken back and is like a mess,
and
it's
quite possibly a German spy.
right. Like just it's interesting and important to know that, and like then it also makes it more interesting when you watch like that Howard Hughes biopic, and you realize how cartoony it was, and like how much they just keep. It's hard to get all the things that really made it. Like she does a great job of making it sing, but basically what I'm trying to say is that like we're living in this time period where a lot of this stuff is coming out and it's becoming like the context for this stuff, and in 20 years we'll look back on it and
hopefully as a sea change and like almost
right.
like
it'll become
almost like a line drawn in the sand,
right? Like this is a period of time, and that we can watch these films with like an academic knowledge of their content. Like right now I kind of feel that way about like a not so much Woody Allen, that's a little too soon still, but like
too soon.
I don't know. Well, like I don't think. Well, I'm not
the
going
thing with Mia Farrow and the stepdaughter.
But what I'm saying is like
20 years old.
But that's come to a head, and he's still making movies.
Exactly, and listen, so that's fine. It's
but he's
fine.
still making movies.
People believe whatever. To me, I'm just like he's on my list of like you don't get $1 from me anymore.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
And that goes back to even his classics. I'm sorry, like.
Well, see, I guess I'm there. The person who I have, Polanski?
Yeah,
is
he's on my list too.
Super problematic. But it's not gonna make me. I'm gonna go watch Rosemary's Baby. He's very problematic.
Is your life more rich by watching Rosemary's Baby though? That's my thing. It's just kind of like to me, it's not. I mean, I've seen it. It's there's no denying the effect that movie had on films going forward as a watershed situation. But I don't need to see that movie ever again.
I don't know. I mean, in terms
same with any Roman Polanski movie. I don't need to.
I don't know.
See
studying that for the type of editing and filmmaking, like for what he was doing with it, is
right.
I
so
think
just study the 5 films that rip it off and do it well.
Well, I think once you're studying films in that sense, and you're thinking about films within historical context, like I mean, it is within the continuum of filmmaking. It does have some significance, some importance, and we still talk about D.W. Griffith's movie, even though it's a horribly racist movie, because it was incredibly innovative, and it did inform, it invented so many things about cinema.
Yes, but it's true. And
so within that historical context,
from a historical context, and you say, okay, that's what that led to. I don't need to ever see it ever again because because it has already influenced everything else. Study the stuff it's influenced, then, and what was the next step?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
but
I
it's also good to like not, it's also good, I think, to not totally bury everything and to to stay aware of the past and its context.
Right, like throw up the disclaimer, like have Leonard Maltin come up and say these were propaganda for World War II cartoons.
Until Leonard Maltin's story comes out.
I know, right?
No,
just
joking.
The dip. I talk just like this. Leonard Maltin is the judge.
That's one dead shoe, eh, boss?
Yeah. So but anyhow, I hope David Simon doesn't have any sinister stuff in his past.
He's British, right?
No.
He's
American.
He's an American. Like we watch stuff like The Wire, and I don't know, maybe we're just like a little more. I mean, like being a bunch of white kids or whatever. Like we're a little more removed from these harsher realities, and this is like tales from inside the crime beat. Like this is direct stuff, and now it seems like I feel like we're in a darker.
But there's a love there. That's the thing with The Wire anyway. I haven't seen enough of The Deuce to see. And what's interesting, what I'm interested in seeing with The Deuce is so many of the other things that David Simon is known for that I've appreciated is like this is happening right now. So it's kind of neat for him to go into this is this is one that's like this has already happened. I'm curious to see where that goes. But getting back to what you were saying is like there's a little bit of like spectatoriness. For us, like
well, also
liberal elites living in the Emerald Towers in New York City, to watch this like stuff going down in Baltimore and the lives that people have to lead.
Right.
But it's done like Jules said in almost an educational.
Right.
It's not exploitative. It's hey, look at this.
Mhm.
This is happening. Please
It's
think
like
about
it's
it.
like a level of reporting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And an exposure, which is good.
And the same with Treme, I mean, it's just like, hey, we're here. This is happening.
Right.
This is.
I think I kind of feel. I guess what I'm trying to
He
think
needs
about.
to make the Puerto Rico show
About the.
about the hurricane.
Oh yeah. I wonder. So with this, I wonder if he's doing a historical because we're in a dark place, maybe.
No, because he started this before
Yeah.
the Trump era. Let's
Yeah.
say. Like, he started this, during the Obama
During the
administration.
Obama thing. Yeah, I guess I guess I'm not like you're saying. A lot of his stuff is usually pretty like current and relevant. And one thing I want to try to see in the Deuce is like where we can tie it into our.
I'm sure there will be plenty
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and some of it's going to be some of the stuff. You're going to see that it still goes on today, and some of it's just going to be like this is what led to. It's like maybe there's some kind of
Right.
trajectory where like this leads into The Wire in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's like I mean I think about the Americans.
This is all a prequel to The Wire.
Yeah. Right.
It's all one universe, the Simon universe.
Simon Cinematic
Simon-verse.
Universe. Because this would have to lead to Homicide: Life on the Streets.
Oh,
and
right.
Then
Yes.
to The Wire.
Mhm. But in the middle is Simon and Simon because it's in the 80s.
Oh man,
I watched a lot of that show.
me
Major
too.
Dad in it.
Me too. Translated into French.
Bonjour, Simon. Bonjour,
Monsieur Simon, Monsieur Simon.
Simon.
Is it called Simon et Simon?
I don't. Yeah, I think it might have been Simon et Simon.
I guess looking at like the Americans, it gained context because of our like current political like thing where you had, basically
It
there.
gained relevance.
Yeah,
almost,
like you had basically the show predicate.
Russia's back on the scene.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
had a show like
It's
predicated.
almost as if you made a cartoon about Fidel Castro being on a bowling team with Saddam Hussein and Ayatollah Khomeini, and then September 11th happens.
And also,
Kind of like that.
and also Red Sparrow coming out.
Wait,
That's
we
like the
I
same
thought
story.
we made it that after. Oh no, we did it before.
We pitched it.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Wow.
Who pitched?
Nuclear strikes.
We made it after.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We were trendsetters.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering. So the
And
because
Muammar Gaddafi.
the Americans like it's initially it was sort of this like nostalgia, 80s nostalgia, Cold War nostalgia, and those like articles about I discovered that my spouse of X many years was a Russian spy, like living in America, like these sort of like maybe apocryphal, but like these tales of like true spy. But they were just sort of like charming, like weird little like things of like tidbits and ephemera from a Cold War era. And then we get into where we are now, where it's like a totalitarian regime, like a mob country that has been like affecting our.
What if Americans, the end of it is totally like Inglorious Bastards, where they have created this reality that we're in now,
where
where Trump is the puppet president of Putin.
Yeah, I could see it.
And it turns out Kushner is actually a spy.
Yeah,
I was
wanna see-
born and raised.
Because, like, I mean, it's the kind of thing too. I mean, this last season is the one that they're working on now. I think they just finished. They're going into post production on it, like into ADR and stuff for the last season.
Until they make the Americans the next generation.
Yeah, make it so.
Yeah, I kind of petered out on the Americans. I think the stakes were too high all the time, and it was too over the top.
Yeah.
And for me, like I liked. I mean, it was fun, and I liked for all. But after like 3 seasons, I was like, this is getting tiring.
Yeah.
Where can they go from here? Kind of thing.
Well, to food.
I guess.
But yeah, we'll see. It's so far the latest, the nearest to last season has been pretty good. So we'll see. So The Deuce, it's on HBO. I think the whole season is out on HBO now, right?
think
Is
so.
it out? So all of it's ran so far?
I
I
think-
guess that makes
At least
sense.
the
Yeah.
season did. Was it?
While you look that up, I want to give you a little bit of for real corner about The
Sure.
Wire. Do you guys remember the character Anthony Colicchio in The Wire? Here's what his picture looks like.
Yes.
Mhm.
So that's actually a friend of Elise's, and I've been to dinner with him.
Weird.
Yeah, so Elise studied literature in college with this guy's dad. Benjamin Bush is his name, is the actor's name, and he's also an author. Really good, really cool book.
Wow.
He was a soldier, and his book is got some stories about that. He had a photography exhibition in Dumbo one time, and Elise and I met up with him, and we had dinner with him and his family. It's really cool.
Nice.
So the Deuces, I mean, again, it's in, I don't know if it's regardless of or in spite of or whatever, they are in production on season 2
Okay.
of the Deuce. So
What do you mean in spite of? Is it not
well,
being
the
well
whole
received?
the whole like Franco
Oh.
controversy. So, they're just, it just becomes like, that's the other side of this whole thing is like,
I heard they were going to replace him with Jake Baruchel.
yeah, well, they're just going to get rid of one of the twins. But,
Because no other actor
Because
can play two
he was the
people.
one that did the bad stuff.
yeah.
That's right.
The other personality. But that's the other thing, like the especially when it comes to like entertainment or any of these business people, like Weinstein, you see this now, his company's declaring bankruptcy or whatever, because this guy behaviors are destructive and selfish and they hurt more than just the people immediately impacted, because hopefully it always tells out, and then you're hurting more people than kind of
It
thing.
doesn't, sadly.
It's becoming more, I think it's becoming more and more
When we
telling.
talk about, as we're talking about a show that's talking about the golden age of exploiting women on the silver screen, I'm glad that this conversation came back around to the Me Too movement.
Yeah,
so.
but I mean, that's a question mark too. It's like, if
They're framing it as though like Maggie Gyllenhaal's character is kind of like but meanwhile, they in the first, they haven't really gotten into the pornography in the first episode,
No.
but there's a lot of exploitation that gets glossed over in pornography. It's kind of a punchline now, like, oh, internet porn, but that exploitation is real.
right, yeah, there's
Shouldn't
definitely
be
that.
taken too lightly.
But it's this. There's an aspect of, if you put it out as a legal product with regulations, you know what I mean, like your LA pornography industries are regulated, then the hope would be that you can stem some of that stuff.
Yeah, some of it.
like
But
that's
sunlight is the ultimate.
Disinfectant.
Yeah, but it can be completely legal to exploit somebody.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the real point behind it. It's
Yeah.
like it's perfectly legal to
Yeah.
exploit somebody's daddy issues or whatever, and I'm making light of it even by saying that, which is rude. But
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's complicated because there's also a level of like, there are some people who have agency in it, and you can't deny that. So it's just a sort of thing of like, yeah, you just got to keep working at it. You just got to be aware that, that sex work is tied to sex trafficking, and even, like we talked about the Falkens and how, like, and even the Amsterdam stuff, like there's still issues with sex trafficking, even though they've been like tried to codify and make laws around it.
But even in smaller ways, like the character in The Deuce, like the like young Midwestern girl who comes to New York
Mm-hmm.
and gets brought into the fold by the pimp or whatever. Like, there's a documentary series on Netflix called Hot Girls Wanted. Like, the title makes it seem like titillating and
Sensational.
stuff, but it's actually, like, it's made by women, and it's really looking at the porn industry and how it like
Feeds on-
Right.
on young impressionable
Right.
women who basically they use it as their avenue to leave their boring little towns, and and they don't have any money or not super well educated or whatever. And I mean, it's like, and the thing is, like, the industry just churns through them,
Right.
and most of them regret it in some shape or form, or are just burn out really fast. But then it's always something that, because of the way the culture looks at
but
it,
somebody else
taints
is
them.
making so much more money off of it than
Mhm.
them.
And but the sad thing is, like, it's not like they're making that much, but it's very much like, but it reminded me so much of that dynamic of the pimp
Right.
and the young girl,
right.
where it's like she knows she's choosing to be there. She, to some extent, knows what she's doing, although it's
Right.
implied that sometimes they don't, and
Right.
he's kind of manipulating them or charming them into it and stuff. And
Before she turns them out. Or
I mean,
whatever,
I think most of them are over 18. They're technically, quote unquote, grown ups, and you can say, well, they chose to be there. But, I mean, that would be the
Mhm.
libertarian angle probably.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, if it happens over and over again, and clearly it does not end up well, then
Then it's a
probably
problem. Yeah.
it's a good idea to help those people.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's a good thing to. I
What
think
was the documentary you said?
it's called Hot Girls Wanted,
Yeah.
and they have both. There was a standalone doc, and then they made like a mini series.
Yeah,
and it just
and it's-
delves into that.
Maybe it's a standalone doc. There's some criticism of it. It's like the standalone doc. There was some criticism of like the whatever
Heavy-handedness.
No, I don't know. There's something I forget exactly what it was. There might be like more about like how rigorous they were, not telling whole stories all the time, like selective editing in their storytelling. So just be aware, like watch it. It's definitely good to watch it and see the perspectives, but then also read. There are a couple like looks at it that are not they aren't overly critical, but they do just kind of say like, hey, be aware of this stuff as you watch this.
Yeah,
because you're getting a point of view.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's one of the things I like about the era we live in is that it's much harder just to watch things without context. Like it's very easy to contextualize something if you're curious or if you want to know more.
Right.
If you just Google whatever it is you just watched, you will hear opinions and thoughts.
Get reactions right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
some useful, some not.
Right.
Well, and you get that too. Like again, the Deuce is coming in this period where you have like Deep Throat, and the woman who is in Deep Throat has like kind of went on a big like she regretted doing it and was kind of coerced and potentially forced into performing some of the stuff on screen, and so there's like a level of basically, yeah. It puts
This is a part of the history, and
puts it into
I hope he
context.
doesn't shy away from it in the series. That's,
Yep.
That's all I'm saying is I hope he gives it David Simon.
Right.
Like you said, he bats 1,000. He's going to get it right.
That's why I think, like if you're gonna have someone dealing with sensitive subject matter as again
in subtle ways,
right?
Yeah.
Like there's something to be said for a journalist storyteller who is like looking at systems like this, like systemic issues that again it comes back around to like if you're going to have someone telling these stories and telling this world, he's someone to do it. Like he's someone to take the stories and find the heart of them and make it come alive again and ring true.
Yeah. It's called The Deuce.
The Deuce. It's on,
and The Deuce is wild.
Yeah, so if you have HBO Go or HBO Now, you can watch it streaming.
You can probably
airs
rent
here and
it
there.
rent it on iTunes by now.
But the bigger picture is David Simon is the real
sure
thing.
He's the sure thing for me. But yeah, the Deuce being his sort of one of his latest ventures. But if you haven't seen The Wire, get back there and watch The Wire.
Homicide Life on the Street.
Homicide Life on the Street.
I do believe that's on Netflix.
And it's probably one of the like if you are into any sort of crime TV procedural,
it's a watershed. It's a watershed show.
Yeah,
like every cop show that's come out after it has been affected by it.
And it set a standard that is hard. It's probably still one of the better like procedural like
some of the best acting.
But you can also still see like it's also interesting to see it compared to The Wire, kind of the growth.
Mm-hmm.
And also just what being on HBO versus network television and allows you to do.
Cool. So that's The Deuce.
And Andre Brower's in it.
They look thirsty. Round on me.
David cast me in The Wire, changed my life. 13 years later, on The Deuce, dream come true.
You need to finish that drink. No pimps in the joint when we're open. House rule.
It's like those things that only come around once in a lifetime, and it's come around twice for me.
106 was right.
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of the New to You Show. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at @FordJoho and on Instagram at @Ford_Ghost. You can find my RPG storytelling podcast at FordGhost.com, and you can find my book club podcast at WoundandStab.com. Keith, where can people find you?
People can find me listening to Wound and Stab. It's a good show. You should go listen to it too out there in listener land. But you can find me on earthlingkeith.com where you can see some of my art and stuff. So how about you, Jules?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BeautifulJules.
We are going to get into our final sure thing pick next week with Keith's. But before we get into that, Jules, what was new to you this week?
new to me was surprise, a documentary.
Yeah.
It's called The Force. It's newly on Netflix, and
the Jedi.
no, unfortunately, it's not. It's about the police force. It's about the Oakland Police Department in particular because they
have lightsabers.
they went through a lot
from the dark side.
So the Oakland Police Department essentially has had a very long history of not being great. Yeah. And then it got so bad that they were they had to the federal government stepped in and was like, you got to clean up your act, or we're going to
send in the
do something. Yeah, send in the feds or whatever. So then they were under federal oversight through a transition period, and so the film starts during this transition period where they've got a new more progressive police chief. There's a new mayor that's a woman who's also very progressive. It's right on the heels of Ferguson, and in Oakland they actually protested.
It's that new. This
situation it just came out.
New.
It's very recent. Yeah.
No, but it's referring to a situation that's as new as Ferguson.
Oh yes.
Wow.
Yes. Well, and basically it seems like things are looking up, but then there's some more some more problems that erupt. So it's a pretty interesting look, and there's another police base that's more broader picture that I'm also excited to check out. It's going to be on Independent Lens on PBS. That looks at the militarization of the police, and I've heard an interview with the filmmakers, and that one sounds like it. I want to see it, but it's also going to freak me out. I can tell. Because I'm already aware of this, but I think this will make it a lot more visceral. And just if you watch the trailer, it's pretty crazy. And unfortunately, I can't think of the title of that one, but maybe if I do see it, I'll circle back to it.
Nice.
But you can just look up Independent Lens out there.
Or maybe it's POV. It's one of those PBS documentary.
And what can you watch it on again?
Well, so the Force
Frontline,
you can watch on
it's
Netflix.
Frontline, I bet.
Oh, it's called Do Not Resist. And it premiered, I guess it premiered February 12th, but I think they may be replaying it. And that was on POV. That's the name of the block or whatever.
Cool.
Yep.
So you recommend it?
The Force and
Do Not Resist.
Do Not Resist the Force.
So it's about sort of the development of a young orphan, basically, essentially, raised in a junk shop on a racing circuit.
Wow, let's keep that. That's a good one.
All right.
And then the other one's about how many midichlorians are in the police nowadays.
So next week, I'm going to bring to the table.
No, it's about the arms dealing of the Jedi,
Oh, yeah, what was it? How Sidious had 6 arms at a certain point, 8 arms.
They do not resist the dark side, basically.
So next week we're going to talk about My Sure Thing, which is some music. Big surprise. Amazing producer, songwriter, musician, singer, Dan Auerbach.
All right. What can people do or watch or listen to prep for that?
Well, the culmination of my discussion will be his latest record, which is called Looking for a Song or Waiting for a Song. So look that up. You can stream it. The whole thing plays on YouTube. If you don't want to, if you don't have Spotify or don't want to pay money for it, check it out there. And go ahead and look up, the Black Keys. He's one of the members. He's 50% of the Black Keys. Keep It Hid is his first solo record, which is tremendous. You should check that out. And if you want to, I'm going to be also discussing some of the records that he produces. Dr. John's latest record he produced. It's really great. He produced a record by Lana Del Rey. He produced Jessica Lee Mayfield's first record. Check it out.
Cool.
And we'll be discussing it next week.
All right. Yeah. All right, gang. So the next sure thing will be that we're back next week with another sure thing.
That's right.
Sure thing.
All right.
Count
So
on it.
may not be new.
Ding, sure thing.
But maybe it was new to you.
Explosion sound.
Pitiful life is all about the music. This 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 pitiful life is all about the music.
With him together.